Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a Monday morning episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast here at the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Welcome to a new week of shows here at the Call Sheet. We are on now our Monday, Wednesday, Friday mid-season schedule, and that's a great opportunity for us to really have some feature shows. And so if you've been following, Mondays is Monday morning game balls, where we award game balls to some of the best performers or teams or units or individuals from the weekend's slate of games. If you join me on Wednesdays, that's our Whiteboard Wednesday show, and my regular guest now for the season is Coach Frank Lasasso, and Frank and I break down some great topics of what's been going on in the league. And then, of course, Fridays is the Hot Route with Pez from Pez's Picks, conversations about sports and life. I'm sure Pez will be fired up, maybe not in a good way, about Europe dominating the United States in the Ryder Cup, and also about some of the NFL action that we saw. So it's a great slate of shows for the week. If you get a chance, hey, like us on Spotify, subscribe to our Pro Football Insiders YouTube. It helps with all the algorithmy stuff that I don't quite understand, but we appreciate it. All right, let's launch in. Monday morning game balls. Who earns a call sheet game ball today? And I think we have to start with a man who is arguably having an MVP season. If you could award an MVP at the quarter mark of the season, which is about where we are. It's a wonky 17 game season. Now we're 4 games in. So for the math sticklers out there, I know we're not technically at the quarter pole, but right about there. We don't give MVP awards to wide receivers. But this year, I don't know if there's a player who is more deserving than Puka Nacua of the LA Rams, who on Sunday in Los Angeles' 27-20 win over Indianapolis had 13 catches for 170 yards. That's a career day for a lot of wide receivers, but Puka Nacua is churning out those types of numbers on a regular basis so far this season. For the season, he has 42 catches for 503 yards through 4 games. That is a mind-boggling pace. 42 catches for 503 yards through 4 games. He's just the second player in NFL history to have a 4,500 start to his season. Only 2 players in the history of the league have ever done that. And he's also on pace for 2,138 yards as a whole. No NFL receiver has ever gone over 2,000. The record for receiving yards in a single season is 1,964 by Calvin Johnson back in 2012 for the Lions. Puka Nacua is on pace for nearly 200 yards more. Now, granted, with 3 quarters of the season to go, with his quarterback being 37-year-old Matthew Stafford, who is battling through some back issues right now, it is way, way too early to say that he's going to be able to eclipse Johnson's mark or become the first receiver to 2,000 yards. Still, the numbers he's putting up right now are staggering. And you'd have to give a lot of the credit to, well, obviously Puka Nacua and to Matthew Stafford and to the offense as a whole, etc. But I think the acquisition of Davante Adams to take some of the pressure off of Nacua, which was something Cooper Kupp couldn't do anymore. Cooper Kupp's been a fabulous receiver throughout his career, but he's reaching that point in his career where he's not that guy who he once was. And he didn't scare teams who were playing the Rams, so they could still kick their coverage to Puka Nacua. They could still pay him more attention than anybody else in that offense. Well, now Davante Adams, he's still Davante Adams. Maybe not what he was 3-4 years ago, but scary enough so that you can't ignore him. And the result is that Puka Nacua is getting some better looks. And boy, is he taking advantage. Before all is said and done, he will probably go down as one of the all-time great 5th-round draft picks. Everybody remembers that Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. How did he last that long? Antonio Brown, 6th round. How did he last that long? I think Puka Nacua will join that conversation, albeit a round earlier. All right, game ball number 2. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, Pittsburgh Steelers, who, as a Steelers fan, I have to be honest, when Pittsburgh signed him, like just about every other Steelers fan, I had my reservations. And those reservations weren't necessarily about whether or not he could still play the game. I watched a lot of his film from his time with the Jets last year. And, you have a lot of people saying, like, he wasn't very good. He finished bottom 3rd in the NFL in most statistical categories. And that is accurate, correct. That is technically correct. But when you watched his film with the Jets last year, what you saw was a guy who, as the season went on, got better and better as he recovered from that Achilles injury that robbed him of almost his entire 2023 season. By the time you get to December last year, Aaron Rodgers playing some pretty good football for the Jets. So I thought to myself, well, a healthy Aaron Rodgers recovered from that Achilles, even though he's 41, he might still be able to play some pretty good quarterback for the Steelers. My bigger reservation was everything that came with it. He's a diva. He's a jerk. He throws people under the bus. He's a me first guy. It's going to be drama and dark retreats and nonsense. And it's so non-Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, if there ever was a franchise that wanted to, at least on the surface, remove itself from all of that stuff, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they're a button down business first organization. And I just didn't see the fit. How is the person, Aaron Rodgers, the personality, going to mesh? And so far, he's been great. He's been really good on the field. He's been great off the field. And watching that game yesterday morning from Ireland, Aaron Rodgers was, dare I say, having fun playing football. Not only did he turn in a tremendous performance, he went 18 out of 22 for 200 yards and a touchdown. He threw some beautiful balls. He handled Brian Flores' blitz schemes masterfully. His use of cadence and management of the play clock was fantastic. There were so many occasions in that game yesterday where Aaron Rodgers hard counted the Vikings with about 7 or 8 seconds left on the play clock to get them to show their hand. What are they doing? And then waited until there was 1 second left, snapped the ball at the very last possible second so that Minnesota could not possibly pre-snap move into anything else. He was taking that picture in his mind of exactly what they were going to be in when the ball was snapped. It's something that Steelers fan watched Ben Roethlisberger do for years. And he did it masterfully. But the thing that really caught my attention was, like, he was actually having fun out there. There were several occasions where Aaron Rodgers was laughing, smiling, tapping guys on the butt, had a jump in his step. He threw an 80-yard touchdown pass to DK Metcalf, which really was about a 10-yard throw on a slant that DK Metcalf then just turned into an 80-yard run by being DK Metcalf. And the camera caught Rodgers walking down the field, following the play with his hands raised in a touchdown signal, and then pointing playfully to the sideline, I think maybe in acknowledgement of Arthur Smith or whomever dialed up the play. And then giddily running down the field like a 20-something-year-old. At one point, he scrambled for a first down, but in the process of scrambling, got hit from behind, fumbled the ball. It was then recovered by a Steelers offensive lineman who rumbled for a few more yards. Rodgers lying flat on his back on the on the grass is given the first down signal. Aaron Rodgers is having fun playing football again. And that's not something I thought I would see out of an almost 42-year-old guy who's rumored to be a diva and kind of a curmudgeon. Game ball number 3. Let's give it to a unit. The New York Giants defensive line. Particularly Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns. Absolutely made life miserable for Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert yesterday. They registered 20 quarterback pressures. 20. That's a lot of quarterback pressures. Herbert dropped back to throw 41 times, 43 if you count the 2 sacks. So he dropped back to throw 43 times. He was pressured on nearly half of those snaps. 20 pressures from Carter, Thibodeau, and Burns. 12 quarterback hits. Carter had 5 hits. Thibodeau had 3. Burns had 4. 12 quarterback hits and 20 pressures out of those 3 guys. And they did it almost exclusively without blitzing. When you can generate that kind of pressure with your front, it's incredible how difficult you can make life for an opponent because you can drop 7 in coverage and you can take away an awful lot of open windows. Herbert, 23 for 41, 203 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 really costly interceptions, 57.3 quarterback rating as the Chargers suffer one of the worst losses of the season. I think the 2 biggest upsets of the NFL season so far have been the Cleveland Browns knocking off Green Bay last week and the Giants, the winless Giants, knocking off the undefeated Chargers on Sunday. New York's got a history of this. If you think back to the 2 Super Bowls where they upset the potent Tom Brady Patriots, they did it by pressuring Brady with their front 4. Now, they had some great pass rushers back then, guys like Justin Tuck and Osi Umenyiora and Michael Strahan, and they were able to get to Tom Brady with just 4 guys and play coverage behind it. And that was the recipe yesterday. So game ball, New York Giants, defensive line, Carter, Thibodeau, Burns, 20 quarterback pressures, pressuring Justin Herbert into a miserable day. Game ball number 4, John Morton, offensive coordinator, Detroit Lions. John Morton, offense coordinator, Detroit Lions. Let's tell John Morton's story before we discuss why he's game ball worthy for yesterday's performance. John Morton, 56 years old, first year ever as a coordinator at any level. He has never coordinated an offense, been the exclusive coordinator of an offense in his entire coaching career at any level. He was an undrafted free agent wide receiver out of Western Michigan University back in 1993. Undrafted free agent, gets a UDFA tryout basically with the Raiders and makes their practice squad. And then between 1993 and 1999, John Morton goes from the practice squad of the Raiders to the Packers practice squad, back to the Raiders, to the Jaguars, back to the Raiders again. He's on 5 different practice squads. Finally gives up his NFL dream, winds up in Canada, plays for the Toronto Argonauts for a year, and then he winds up across the pond in NFL Europe, playing for the Frankfurt Galaxy, before finally calling it quits in 1999. And at that time, he then entered a coaching career. He was hired by the Oakland Raiders, then Oakland Raiders, and over the course of the next 25 years, from 1994 to 2024, he coached for 7 different NFL teams and also had a brief stint at USC in the college ranks. Over that time, he was a quality control coach. He was a wide receivers coach. He was a senior offensive assistant, whatever the hell that means. In 2023, Sean Payton's first year in Denver, he brought John Morton on as their pass game coordinator, but he was not the exclusive coordinator. And then this past offseason, when Ben Johnson left to take the Bears head coaching job, John Morton, at 55 years of age, got hired to be Detroit's offensive coordinator. The NFL rarely gives older coaches, guys who have been in the league for a long, long time, a first shot at that age. You know, the trend is these young coordinators that have come up in the new brand of offensive football. RPOs and spread read options and spread schemes and air raid passing and all that stuff. Pre-snap motion, blah, blah, blah. I mean, John Morton, he's a guy who played like when I played. The pro eye, run power, pack 22 dudes into a phone booth and man up. You know, that was football then. And when you've been in the game as a coach for as long as he has without ever getting the opportunity to be a coordinator, then the the book is generally written on you. You know, the perception is like, well, this guy could be a good position coach, an advisor, a quality control coach, but we're not going to let him run an offense. And we're not going to let him run an offense as potent as the Detroit Lions, because following Ben Johnson is a pretty tough act. And after week one, the reviews were terrible. Detroit with an ugly week one loss to Green Bay. They scored 13 points. They looked bad doing it. The Lions are going to stink this year. They miss Ben Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Well, that narrative has been rewritten because over the last 3 weeks, the Detroit Lions have reeled off 124 points. They're averaging 41 points per game. They're now 3-1, and on Sunday they defeated the Cleveland Browns. They put 34 points up on Cleveland. That is a Cleveland defense that held the supposedly potent Packers to just 10 points 1 week earlier. Cleveland, say what you want about where they are offensively, they're really good on defense. So tip of the cap and a game ball to John Morton, who at 56 years old, in his first ever stint as a coordinator at any level, has, for the last week at least, that Detroit offense looking just like it did when Ben Johnson was the OC. All right, and we'll wrap the show up with a game ball that I don't think anyone listening is going to want to acknowledge, but we're going to have to do it. Game ball, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs. Because yesterday, they looked like the Chiefs again, particularly on offense, where they got wide receiver Xavier Worthy back. Xavier Worthy, if you remember, was knocked out of their opening night game against the Chargers by friendly fire, where on a mesh route, he and Travis Kelce collided and Xavier Worthy separated his shoulder. Dislocated it, I think. And then he missed the next couple weeks, and the Chiefs offense sputtered, and they were 1-2. And, you know, all the narrative was the Chiefs are dead, the Chiefs are dead. And then on Sunday, they absolutely smacked the Baltimore Ravens 37-20. Now, Baltimore's a team with its own problems, but we'll leave that for another day. Xavier Worthy in his return to the lineup, 121 total yards. His speed just opens up so much for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes went off, 25 out of 37. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Kansas City just looked like Kansas City again. And when you assess the rest of the AFC West, it still feels like it's their division. The Chargers were 3-0 heading into Sunday. Bad loss in New York against the Giants. And what it revealed was how banged up LA's offensive line is. I mean, 20 pressures on Justin Herbert. He's not going to be able to survive if they don't fix that, and there's no easy fix for the Chargers. The Broncos have not so far looked as good as a lot of people thought they would. The Raiders are a long way away right now. In the big picture, as the Chiefs get healthy and ultimately improve as the season goes, they're probably still the class of that division, and that's not something anybody wants to hear. But as Jeff Hartman has heard me say many times, the Chiefs are like Dracula, man. You got to drive the stake all the way through their heart to make sure they're dead. And they're not dead yet. All right, those are our Monday morning game balls. Puka Nacua, Aaron Rodgers, the New York Giants defensive line, John Morton, OC of the Lions, and the Kansas City Chiefs. It was a fabulously entertaining weekend of football, highlighted or culminated, I should say, and it was a highlight, by a fascinating Dallas Green Bay game that ended in a 40-40 tie. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to guess that was the first NFL game to end in a 40-40 tie. I can't imagine we've ever had a 40-40 tie before in the NFL. I'll have to look that up. But it was great, man. The NFL has been wildly entertaining so far in this 2025 season. I can't wait for more. All right, join me on Wednesday. As I mentioned, Whiteboard Wednesday, Coach Frank Lasasso back with me to talk tight ends. Fascinating usage of tight ends in the NFL so far this year. We're going to talk about their multiplicity, revisit a little bit of my conversation with Ben Troop, former All-American at the University of Florida and NFL tight end who was on this program about 2 months ago. And we're going to talk about some of the things that Ben mentioned and how we're seeing them in action in the NFL right now at the tight end position. So join me then. Until then, hope everybody has a great day. Take care.